Hey guys, welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great weekend so far. In today's episode, what we'll be discussing, we have an ESPN Eastern Conference projections. Where the Detroit Pistons were ranked in this one, because I have not seen the Pistons ranked this low in any projection. Don't agree with it, so we're going to be reacting and going over that. We also have the NBA GM survey. These come out every year. It's always really cool to read and see what these GMs do vote on across the league and where the Detroit Pistons were kind of mentioned in this article. We have BleacherReport.com. They decided to do an article having trades with one player on each team. We have a mention of two Detroit Pistons trade in this article, one with the Charlotte Hornets and one with the Utah Jazz. So we'll be going over that. And then we'll wrap up the podcast with just overall preseason thoughts, players that have stood out so far, and the remainder two preseason games going into this week. Let's get to it. So ESPN does this every year, you guys. They do a projection list of where they believe each team with both conferences will finish. Since we are a Detroit Pistons podcast, we'll be focusing on the Eastern Conference, right? So we're going to be going over the first seed all the way down to the 10th seed. Don't really care about the Western Conference since this is a Detroit Pistons podcast. So coming in at number one, no surprise here, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, they have a projection win total for the Cavs this year at 50 wins, 50.1 to be exact. The ESPN bet over-under is set at 56.5, and they kind of go into the reasoning why they believe that the Cavs will actually finish with the under this season. It says the Cavaliers are probably due some regression to the mean after jumping from 48 wins to 64 last season. Part of that relates to health, and Cleveland already has two starters, Darius Garland and Max Strus, sidelined to start the season, forcing Kenny Atkinson deeper into his perimeter rotation than he had last season. The Cavaliers are still a strong pick to claim the East top seed, but perhaps with a lower win total in 24-25. So, no disagreement for me here. I think anytime we do these lists, anytime we see top seeded teams in the East, the Cavs are always at the top. Darius Garland is injured. Max Strus is injured. I think that's why we've been seeing reports of Malik Beasley in the Cavs in conversations, because they are looking to get someone that can come in right away and contribute and get them instant offense off the bench. Malik actually talked about it on his Snapchat that the Cavs have been in talks with him, and he's been in talks with several other teams, if you guys saw the video that we posted yesterday. But Cavs coming at number one. I can kind of see them in a top seed, 56.5. Maybe they're around 50, 60 wins this year. I think it just really depends on how their season goes and how they progress. Coming at number two, the Orlando Magic. So the Magic, to me, I've seen a lot of people have them anywhere between the second and the third seed. So ESPN has their projected wins at 49.9, and the ESPN over-under is set at 51.5 for the Orlando Magic this season. And why they have the projections is this. If anything, my projections are probably more bullish on the Magic, who place just a hair behind Cleveland for the best in the East. The small discrepancy can probably be attributed to overlooking the schedule, a factor that is easy to overrate, but one that is not specifically included in these projections. Orlando has also dealt for Desmond Bane this past summer, a move that should contribute to their success. I don't really have a problem with Orlando being 2-3 in any kind of projections. I just don't. I think a lot of people, maybe they just forgot because it was really early in the season. But, before they had all the injuries last year, they were one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. Paolo Banchero had an oblique tear. They just kind of dipped down in the standings. Paolo comes back. Franz Wagner gets the same oblique tear. Jalen Suggs had hip and back issues. They just had so many injuries. They still finished the season 41-41 last year. So, upgrading from KCP to Desmond Bane, I think shouldn't go, undersold whatsoever. And I know as Pistons fans, obviously this is a team that matches up with us pretty well just because they have the wing defenders like we do. But Orlando and Piston matchups this year, I think, are just going to be bloodbaths. I think they're going to just be defensive, gritty battles, and I can't wait to play the Magic this year. But ESPN does have them coming in at number 2 in their projections. Coming in at number 3 on ESPN's projection list is the New York Knicks. Their projected wins are set at 47.2. The ESPN bet over-under is 53.5. The reason why they have the Knicks actually finishing worse than their over-under projections is this. The Knicks outperformed last season, 45.4 win projection by 5.5 games, benefiting from a strong in-season health among New York's starting 5. Only Jalen Brunson missed as many as 9 games due to illness or injury. That might be difficult to replicate, and I'm continuing on fewer minutes from the Knicks' top players with Mike Brown replacing Tom Thibodeau as coach. I'd expect New York to finish somewhere between those two marks, ending around 50 wins. Honestly, just as a Piston fan, we played these guys in the first round, and that series was so much fun to watch. I feel like, man, if we were healthy, we'd probably, go to the second round. We go see Boston, right? But I'm not going to dwell on that. I think where ESPN is at is obviously Tibbs played those guys a crap load of minutes. That is just a Tom Thibodeau thing to do. Did it in Chicago, did it in Minnesota, did it in New York. Mike Brown, I think, as a coach, isn't really that big of a drop-off from Tibbs. I think what you'll probably see more is a lot more ball movement. They had mentioned that they're trying to run the 0.5 offense. If that even sounds remotely familiar, Monty Williams actually tried to do that here in Detroit, but I mean, it's kind of hard to do when you have guys like outside of Cade, like get Killian and Cade as your backcourt. Like that's probably not going to work, right? But they're trying to run the 0.5 offense. I thought they had a pretty good offseason, getting Yabusele, getting Jordan Clarkson. They're locking guys down like Mikal Bridges. I think they will be better. I actually disagree with this ranking by ESPN. I think they'll be above 50 wins. They brought back a majority of their core. I think the only players they've really lost were like Cameron Payne, and that's not really a loss in my personal opinion. They have young guys. Oops, Mike fell. Like Tyler Kolek. I really like their offseason as a Piston fan from afar. I don't really think they're going to fall off. I honestly think they could be a 2 seed. I think them and Orlando are probably going to be trading places between the 2nd and the 3rd seed. But that's just me. It's just like a basketball fan taking my Piston fandom off for a second. I think them under 50 wins is kind of crazy to me. But that's just me. I just want to say the rest of these Eastern Conference rankings get very hot take-ish to me. I have not seen the Indiana Pacers for it all. I don't know if ESPN forgot Tyrese Halliburton is going to be out for the remainder of the season. I've seen the Pacers in Eastern Conference, at least the playoffs in the projections before the season has started. I have not seen them top 4. I don't think they're going to be a top 4 team, but this is ESPN's reasoning why they have the Pacers top 4. So their win projection, they think they're going to win around 45, 46 games. Their ESPN bet over-under is set at 38.5. The reason why they have it higher said even though former Indiana center Miles Turner is now with the Bucks, will be difficult to replace. This number feels shockingly low. The Pacers were still competitive last season when they were without Tyrese Halliburton, who will miss the 25-26 campaign, so they do know that he's going to be out. Interesting. With the torn Achilles. And Indiana's replacement at center, most notably big man Jay Huff, do rate better than a conventional wisdom. I am not confident Indiana can finish in the same spot in the standings last season, but I like the Pacers' chances of being better than 500. Okay, here's the thing, man. Indiana's not finishing top 4. I'm sorry. They're just not. Rick Carlisle, hell of a coach. You lost the player in Tyrese Halliburton who gets everything going. Like, he's one of the best point guards in the NBA. I like Andrew Nebhard. I like TJ McConnell. Benedict Matherin's interesting. You have Obi Toppin. Pascal Siakam's still going to be out there. But the fact that he goes and says, yeah, they lost Miles Turner, but Jay Huff is just going to, keep the Pacers afloat, man. That's laughable. That's laughable. There's no way the Pacers are finishing top 4. We're going to go on to number 5. Oh, man, this list just gets more comical once you get past 3, but let's go to number 5. Coming in at number 5, we have the Boston Celtics. Projected wins, they have 45.6, so around 45 wins. ESPN bet over under 40.5. The reason why they have the Celtics finishing with more wins than they're under over. As with Indiana, there might be too much focus on the players Boston lost and not enough on the ones who remain. The Celtics still have 8 players projected better than average, tied for 8th most in the league, including All-Star Jaylen Brown and statistically standout Derek White. The caveat here is Boston could subtract during the season to avoid the luxury tax and take a chance at the lottery before Jason Tatum, who is likely out for the season after rupturing his Achilles tendon. Okay, here's the thing. Again, Jason Tatum is a big part of the Boston Celtics. Everyone knows that. Even if you're a Piston fan watching, like, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are that 1-2 punch. You're not finishing as a top 5 seed in the East. You're just not. You're probably around like 6 to 9, like around there. I just don't understand it. Obviously, Anthony Simons is an interesting piece. One-time Piston Luka Garza is the center over there. They signed Chris Boucher. I watched a preseason game with the Celtics. They looked really bad. They looked really rusty. Not to say that, Jaylen Brown can't step up as a leader and be that number 1 option, but being a top 5 seed, Jaylen Brown would have to play like a top 3 player in the NBA for that to happen. He would probably be in MVP conversations with Jokic and SGA. I don't see it with Boston. I think they're going to just kind of have a retool year. If they make the playoffs, cool. Don't really think their fan base is up in arms with them trying to force Jason Tatum back, even though he does want to come back. He's trying to target like a March return date. But, I mean, I think for the Celtics, they'll probably just kind of have a middle-of-the-pack year. But top 5 to me is honestly crazy. It really is by ESPN. Coming in at number 6 in these Eastern Conference projections is the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, I've seen the Bucks anywhere between like 5 and 8 in these projections. So the wins they have set is 44.5. The ESPN bet over under is set at 42.5. And the reasoning why is I might point out that Milwaukee has Giannis, and I'll leave it at that. Bucks went 11-5 last season in games Giannis played without Damian Lillard, albeit against a weak schedule, and they've upgraded that center from Brook Lopez to Miles Turner. And due in part to that success, my model is higher on guards like AJ Green, Kevin Porter Jr., and Ryan Rollins than conventional wisdom would suggest. I don't really have a problem with the Bucks finishing 6. All the Giannis talk right now is just wild. I think a lot of people have been calling it, especially where the Bucks are at in terms of just draft capital, in terms of cap space. As long as they have Giannis, they're probably a playoff team, but it really depends how long Giannis wants to play in Milwaukee. But I don't really see them being like a top-tier Eastern Conference team unless they could make some kind of acquisition, some kind of trade, and I don't know how that's even possible, considering they just paid Miles Turner. They have to pay Damian Lillard all the money that He is owed after waiving and stretching him. So Bucks come in at number 6 in this one. So coming in at number 7, the Atlanta Hawks, which is kind of surprising. I've seen a lot of people nationally think that the Hawks will be a top 4 seed in the East. Their projected wins is 44.3, so around 44 wins. Their ESPN bet over under is set at 46.5. And this is the reason why they have them slated in at 7. The hype might be getting a little heavy for the Hawks, whose offseason was undoubtedly positive, but perhaps not transformative in the short term. I'm higher than the model on Atlanta's chances of avoiding the play-in, but I would still be surprised if they finish in the East top 4. So Kevin Pelton of ESPN doesn't really buy the hype with the Hawks acquiring Kristaps Porzingis, getting a healthy Jalen Johnson back. They signed Luke Kennard. They also signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They do have some interesting pieces. You still have Trae Young. Zachary Richardson looks like he put on some weight in the offseason. I think the Hawks will finish a little bit above the 7 seed. I could see them being anywhere from like 6 to possibly 4. If they're healthy. Like if Jalen Johnson stays healthy, they're a problem. But if he doesn't stay healthy, I could see them maybe falling to a 7 seed. And maybe that's why Kevin Pelton of ESPN doesn't believe that they will be a top 4 seed like a lot of people in the media are crowning them to be. But very interesting to read that he doesn't really buy the hype with the Hawks. Coming in at number 8, the Detroit Pistons. So if we look at the projected wins, I think the Pistons are going to win 42.6 games. So we'll say 41, 42 games. So that would be a step back from last year. Their ESPN bet over under is set at 45.5. As you guys know, the Pistons won 44 games this year. So ESPN only thinks the Pistons will be maybe a game better or possibly 2 games worse. And this is the reason why. Largely because of the loss of Malik Beasley, arguably Detroit's second best player last season after all-star centerpiece Cade Cunningham, replacements Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson don't rate anywhere near as effectively as Beasley, who finished second in the NBA in three-pointers last season. Relying more on young talent could cause the Pistons to take a short-term step back. Okay, now I don't disagree with the notion that the Pistons could take a step back. Where I have a disagreement is the 8th seed. Now, could the Pistons take a step back and still finish as a top 5 seed or a top 6 seed? Absolutely. I don't think they're going to be an 8 seed. I think 8 is actually kind of like a little bit wild to me, a little bit disrespectful to me. Now, Malik Beasley has said, like, hey, the FBI investigation is done with. I'm being investigated by the NBA because they have to, because of protocol. I will be making my decision soon. I will be signing with an NBA team soon. I will be playing in the NBA this season. The Pistons still have an open roster spot. It's been reported that they've been keeping that open roster spot just in case what could happen with Malik Beasley. Now, here's my thinking. Like, if they bring back Malik Beasley, would you still have them at 8? Probably not. Obviously, Duncan Robinson is not Malik Beasley. They're completely different players. Duncan can shoot the three-point ball quite well. He can put the ball on the floor, can rebound, pass a little bit. But I can understand from ESPN's perspective of losing Beasley. Season hasn't really started yet. I just don't think they're an 8 seed, you guys. I really don't. He did take a big jump in stepping up when Jaden Ivey was injured. He was one of Cade Cunningham's favorite targets last season. Set a franchise record for making over 300 threes. He's the all-time leader in Detroit Pistons history in a single season for three-pointers made. Finished second behind Anthony Edwards. That should not go unsold, but I don't think they drastically go from a 6 seed to an 8 seed just because of the loss of Malik Beasley. They did add three-point shooting in Duncan Robinson and in Karis LeVert. You're getting Jaden Ivey back. You still have Marcus Sasser. Chaz Lanier looks like he's going to be a good player once he gets used to the NBA speed of the game. But I think 8 seed to me is just absolutely wild and very hot take-ish. The final 2 seeds in the East, Toronto Raptors and the Miami Heat. Toronto does come in at number 9. Their projected wins is at 40.7. Their ESPN bet over-under is set at 38.5. ESPN's reasoning for that is the Raptors' moves have capped their upside, but should produce a competitive team given reasonable health. Toronto was in the top 10 in games missed due to injury or illness, including Brandon Ingram sitting out the remainder of the season after being acquired from New Orleans at the deadline. One quiet move my model likes is the addition of Sandro. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. I remember he was with the Spurs, who was effective last season. Here's the thing. I think the Raptors, they could win some games. They could be an 8 seed. They could possibly be a 7 seed, depending on health, right? Like, they have a lot of talent. RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Brandon Ingram. They locked down Yoka Poeltl. I think there is pressure on them to win more. I even forgot to mention Scotty Barnes because they just have so much talent over there. I think there's more pressure on them to win than being a lottery team. But obviously they had a lot of injuries last year. But they'll definitely be, competing for a playoff spot, in my personal opinion. And coming in at number 10, Miami Heat. So their projected win totals for the Miami Heat is 40.3. The ESPN bet over under is set at 38.5. And the reasoning why, we're not far apart here. Adding Norman Powell should help Miami remain competitive, with Tyler Hero sidelined to start the season following the surgery as an impingement in his left foot. That's all they really have to say about the Miami Heat. That's actually kind of wild and funny. Not even a sentence or two. Wow. Okay. So, Miami, obviously the injury to Tyler Hero is a big blow to them. They still have Bam Adebayo. They traded for Norman Powell, which I thought was a pretty solid move by them. Andrew Wiggins is down there. They kind of just have a bunch of pieces that can keep them afloat in the Eastern Conference. Are they a play-in team? Possibly. You can never really count out the Miami Heat and Eric Spoelstra, but I mean, out of the top 10 teams, man, like the ones that I do disagree with, obviously the Detroit Pistons. I don't see them being the 8 seed. I think that's crazy. I think the Hawks will be a little bit better too. I think where this list is really just fell apart is Indiana and Boston. I think Indiana and Boston, to me, you guys are going to be way lower in the standings. I don't think they're going to be a 4 and 5 seed respectively. I think you could have Detroit and Atlanta up there as a 4 and 5 seed. So we're going to be transitioning over to the second topic of today's podcast. It is the NBA General Manager Survey. This one will be a little bit less crazy. So what the NBA does is they go over and ask each general manager a set of questions, and they vote on it, and then they pull all the surveys from each general manager across the league and make a whole article about it each and every year. So that's what we're going to be talking about and reacting to next. So let's get to it. All right, this is the NBA General Manager Survey. So we're going to be kind of skimming through it because this is a kind of a lengthy article. So one of the first questions that they did get asked was the predictions, who's going to win the NBA Finals. 80% of the general managers thought OKC would be winning back-to-back titles. Cleveland Cavaliers got 7%, tied for second, along with the Denver Nuggets. Also receiving votes, the Houston Rockets, New York Knicks got a bulk of the votes for the predictions. Eastern Conference rankings, we can kind of see 63% of the GMs think that the Cavs will have the number 1 seed. 27% think they'll have the second seed. Third seed, 7%. So they don't think they'll finish below the third seed. With New York, 30% that they'll finish with the first seed. 53% that they'll finish with the second seed, and 13% that they'll finish the third seed. Orlando, they think that they can kind of finish anywhere between the first, second, third, or fourth. So 7% of the GMs think that Orlando could be the number one seed this year. 13% of the GMs think they could be the second seed, and 60% think Orlando can finish as the third seed, and 13% think they'll be the fourth seed. For Atlanta, only 3% of the GMs think Atlanta could go all the way up to the second seed. 37% of them voted on that they could be a top four seed this year. For Detroit, 10% of the GMs across the league think the Detroit Pistons could be as high as the number 3 seed this year. But a bulk of them voted on the Pistons finishing as a top 4 seed at 23% of the votes coming in. Milwaukee, 3% of the GMs voted that Milwaukee could finish as the second seed. Don't really see it. 10% voted on them finishing as high as a third seed. And a bulk of their votes came in at the 4 seed, with 13% of the general managers voting on that. Philly, 10% of the GMs voted thinking they could finish as a 4 seed. These guys stay healthy, man. They really do. And then kind of finish this Boston. 3% of the GMs think that they could finish as the top 4 seed. But kind of cool seeing, 10% of the GMs across the league think the Pistons could finish as a top 3 seed. But let's keep going with this ranking. We can kind of skip past the Western Conference since this is a Detroit Pistons podcast. This is where it gets fun. So players who could win MVP. So 67% of the GMs think it's going to be Jokic. 10% think it's going to be Luka Doncic. 8% think it's going to be SGA. 7% think it's going to be Victor Wembanyama. You're going to see a lot of Wemby glazing in these voting from these GMs. It's kind of crazy. Also receiving votes, Giannis, Anthony Edwards, and Donovan Mitchell. So that's what the GMs think in terms of most valuable player. It said if you were starting a franchise today and could sign any player in the NBA, who would it be? 83% of the GMs decided that they would like to start a franchise with Victor Wembanyama. 13% voted on SGA. Only 3% actually voted on Nikola Jokic, which is kind of crazy. It's just wild to me. Which player forces opposing coaches to make the most adjustments? 57% of the GMs voted on Nikola Jokic. 17% voted on Giannis. 13% voted on Stephen Curry. 10% voted on Luka Doncic. And 3% voted on SGA. Going into the next question, which player is most likely to have a breakout season? Amen Thompson got 30% of the vote. Given Fred VanVleet's going to be out, no surprise there. Tied for second, Charlotte Hornets forward Brandon Miller. Also tied for second, Detroit Pistons forward Asar Thompson. So you got the Thompson twins most likely to break out in 25-26. I think Asar's going to have a big year. Also tied for second, Victor Wembanyama. Fifth, we have Franz Wagner. Also receiving votes, you got Denny Avdia from Portland, Stephon Castle from San Antonio, Jalen Green from Phoenix, Jalen Johnson from Atlanta, Tyrese Maxey from Philly, Alex Sarr from Washington, Alperen Sengun from Houston, Reed Shepard from Houston, Jabari Smith from Houston, and Zion Williamson from the Pelicans. But pretty cool to see that Asar was in the top 2, tied for second for a player most likely to have a breakout season. Who's the best point guard in the NBA? So they got SGA, 73% of the votes from the general managers voted for him. Number 2, Luka Doncic, 17%. Stephen Curry got 7%. Tyrese Halliburton got 3%. So that's what the GMs think, who is the best point guard in the NBA. Best shooting guard, Anthony Edwards. No surprise there. He got 70% of the votes. Donovan Mitchell got second place for 13% of the votes. Tied for third, Luka Doncic at number 7. I don't even know what to categorize Luka. I know this is off topic. Like, I thought he was a forward. I thought he was a point guard, but they kind of have him at shooting guard. It's just weird. Basketball's all positionless now. I don't know what guys play. I don't know what positions they are anymore. Tied for third, SGA at 7%. Stephen Curry at 3%. I thought Steph Curry was a point guard. Now they have him as a shooting guard. Like, NBA is so confusing sometimes, man. It really is. Who's the best small forward? Luka Doncic, 40%. Jason Tatum coming in at second with 20% of the votes. Number 3, Kevin Durant at 17%. Tied for 4th, LeBron James at 7%. Tied for 4th, Kawhi Leonard at 7%. Also receiving votes, Jaylen Brown, Jimmy Butler, Jalen Williams, and that's it for small forwards. Power forwards, who's the best power forward in the NBA? 93% of the GMs voted on Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Bucks. No surprise there. Evan Mobley got 7% of the vote for the best power forward in the NBA. So shout out to Evan Mobley for even getting votes, because we really don't have like power forwards like we used to back in the day. Like when I was growing up as a kid, there were so many great power forwards. Like you had like Sheed, Kevin Garnett, Chris Webber. Like there's a lot of great power forwards. We don't really have too many. Kind of shows you how the NBA game has changed so much. But going over to best center, Nikola Jokic got 97% of the votes as the best center in the NBA. Victor Wembanyama got 3% of the votes as the best center in the NBA. High percentage of total votes for the positions. Jokic got the most votes. Giannis got the second most votes. SGA got the third most votes. Anthony Edwards got the fourth most votes, coming at 14%. And Luka Doncic got the fifth most votes. So offseason moves. Which team made the best overall moves this offseason? The Hawks come in at number 1 at 53%. The Houston Rockets, number 2 at 27%. Denver Nuggets, 10%, which I kind of think Denver should be higher just with their acquisitions. The Magic at 7% and the Celtics at 3%. Which one player acquisition will make the biggest impact? 73% of the GMs voted that Kevin Durant will make the best impact for the Houston Rockets. 17% of the GMs voted Desmond Bane will make a big impact for the Orlando Magic, which I tend to agree with. Also receiving votes, Cooper Flagg from the Dallas Mavericks, easily winning the lottery. He's going to be really good. Drew Holiday for the Portland Trailblazers. Milwaukee Bucks with Miles Turner, which I'm still trying to process how Miles Turner is a Milwaukee Buck being in Indiana for so long. But hey, man, that's crazy. Another question they were asked, who is the most underrated player acquisition? Desmond Bane got first place with 17% of the votes. Cam Johnson, which I think was actually kind of an underrated trade for the Nuggets. 13% of the votes comes in at second. Kristaps Porzingis, 10% of the votes that comes in at third for the Hawks. Tied for fourth, we've got a four-way tie with Lonzo Ball, John Collins, Dorian Finney-Smith, Drew Holiday, and Luke Cornett. Also receiving votes, DeAndre Ayton. I don't really know about that one. Bradley Beal with the Clippers, Jalen Green with Phoenix, Al Horford with Golden State, Kevon Looney with the New Orleans Pelicans, Brook Lopez with the Clippers, Norman Powell with Miami, and Marcus Smart with the Lakers. Honestly, this offseason's been so boring, I forgot Marcus Smart was even a Laker. It just kind of tells you like how bad this offseason's been. Which team will be the most improved this season? 47% of the GMs think that the Magic are going to be taking that jump, which I kind of tend to agree. They just got to stay healthy. Tied for second, the Hawks and the San Antonio Spurs. Definitely could see the Spurs making a big impact. Victor Wembanyama coming back from blood clots. You have De'Aaron Fox. They have some pretty interesting pieces. They got Dylan Harper. I don't even know how San Antonio got the number 2 pick in this draft. Kind of seems fixed to me, but hey, that's just me. The Philadelphia 76ers come in at 4th with 10% of the votes. New Orleans Pelicans come in at 5th with 3% of the votes. One of the other questions I asked them, which was the most surprising move this offseason? Milwaukee waiving and stretching Damian Lillard. Yeah, that had to be first because that still doesn't make sense from the Bucks standpoint. It really doesn't. Miles Turner going to Milwaukee was shocking too, 30%. Atlanta and New Orleans draft trade. That trade, I think it's going to come back to bite New Orleans in the ass. I really do. But hey, man, Troy Weaver and Joe Dumars are doing the thing down there. Tied for third. Celtics breaking up their core. It shouldn't really be too surprising given like what Boston they would have to pay in luxury taxes, but I get it. Rookie and international players, they got Cooper Flagg coming in at number 1 with 97% of the votes. VJ Edgecombe only getting 3% of the votes, which I'm kind of surprised. I think VJ Edgecombe is actually going to be a pretty good rookie for the 76ers. I'll be watching how he does this year for them. Which rookie will be the best player in 5 years? Cooper Flagg, no surprise there. Also receiving votes, VJ Edgecombe, Philly, Dylan Harper, San Antonio. Okay. 5 years ago, James Wiseman, 36% of the votes. He actually came back from an Achilles injury. I just saw him the other day playing with the Pacers. So good to see that James Wiseman's still out there playing ball. Happy for him. Which rookie was the biggest steal in the draft? So they got Casper from the Miami Heat. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because I'll butcher it. Ace Bailey, tied for second with Carter Bryant, and tied for fourth. Yon Bernager from Minnesota, who's just going to be a really good center, really good defensive center. Probably Rudy Gobert's replacement in a few years. Liam McNeely with Charlotte, and Asa Newell with the Hawks. This draft was weird, man. It really was. Especially for us because we didn't have a first-round draft pick. But let's kind of wrap up this list from the NBA GM surveys. Who's the best international player? Nikola Jokic, no surprise there. Luka Doncic and SGA also got some votes. Who's the best international player not in the NBA? Don't even know who any of these guys are. I know Kendrick Nunn and Nikola Mirotic and Cedi Osman. I don't know who the first place guy is because I don't really follow international ball too deeply. Defense. Who's the best defender in the NBA? Victor Wembanyama got 80% of the votes. Rudy Gobert and Evan Mobley tied for second with 7% of the votes. Giannis, Lou Dort got a couple of votes as well, but not enough to actually place in the top 5 in this list. Who's the best perimeter defender in the NBA? Dyson Daniels got first place with 31% of the votes. Alex Caruso got 24% of the votes with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Amen Thompson got 22% of the votes from the Houston Rockets. Lou Dort, 14%, came in fourth place. Drew Holiday comes in at 5 with 7% of the votes. Asar Thompson got 2% of the votes. What's kind of funny, though, is Asar Thompson was actually touted to be the better defender out of the Thompson twins. It'll be interesting to see where Asar is ranked next year going into the season as, you know, the best perimeter defender in the NBA. I mean, if you ask him right now, he thinks he is. Who is the best interior defender in the NBA? Wemby coming in at number 1, 80%. Rudy Gobert came in at second at 10% of the votes. Also receiving votes, Anthony Davis, Evan Mobley, Avasa Eubanks come in as the best interior defender in the NBA. Who's the most versatile defender in the NBA? Amen Thompson, again, coming in at number 1 with 18% of the votes. Draymond Green comes in at second with 17% of the votes. Giannis Antetokounmpo comes in at third with 13% of the votes. Three-way tie coming in at fourth. You have Dyson Daniels, Evan Mobley, and Victor Wembanyama all receiving 10% of the votes. Tied for seventh, OG Anunoby and Lou Dort got 7% of the votes. Also receiving votes, Tamani Kamara from Portland. He had a really good rookie season last year. Honestly, I think he saved Chauncey Billups' job personally. Really good defender. Tari Eason from the Houston Rockets, and Asar Thompson from the Detroit Pistons. So Asar is getting a little bit of respect as a good defender, as he should. Which is the best defensive team in the NBA? Oklahoma City Thunder comes in at 1 and 83%. And then we have a two-way tie between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Orlando Magic. And the Houston Rockets come in at fourth with 3% of the votes. Now we're getting into the coaches. Who's the best head coach in the NBA? Eric Spoelstra comes in at first with 52% of the votes. Mark Daigneault gets 34% of the votes, coming in second place. Tyronn Lue, 7%, coming in at third place. Also receiving votes, Rick Carlisle from Indiana, Nick Nurse from Philly. I don't think Nick Nurse is a good coach. I don't know why people voted for him. I just don't. That's just me though, man. I don't get the Nick Nurse love. Which head coach is the best manager / motivator of people? Eric Spoelstra comes in at first at 28%. Udoka from Houston comes in at second place with 24%. Tied for third, Steve Kerr and Joe Mazzulla receiving 14% of the votes. Tyronn Lue coming in fifth place with 7% of the votes. Also receiving votes, Kenny Atkinson, J.B. Bickerstaff from the Pistons, Rick Carlisle from the Pacers, and Jamal Mosley from the Orlando Magic. Kind of surprised JB's actually not higher on this, kind of considering what the Pistons did last year. But hey, I'm happy they got a mention. Which head coach makes the best in-game adjustments? So we got Tyronn Lue coming in at number 1 with 40% of the votes. Number 2, Mark Daigneault at 23%, coming in second place. And tied for third, Rick Carlisle and Eric Spoelstra receiving 13% of the votes. Also receiving votes, Kenny Atkinson, Chris Finch, and Udoka from the Houston Rockets. Tyronn Lue got first in this question last year as well. Which head coach runs the best offense? So we got Rick Carlisle coming in at number 1. No surprise there, 53% of the votes. Got a two-way tie between Kenny Atkinson and Chris Finch. They got 10% of the votes. And tied for fourth, Mark Daigneault and Steve Kerr with 7%. Also receiving votes, Mike Brown, Tyronn Lue, Quinn Snyder, and Eric Spoelstra. Which head coach has the best defensive schemes? There. Got Mark Daigneault coming in at number 1 with 37% of the votes. You got Udoka coming in at second with 23% of the votes. Eric Spoelstra at 13%. And then tied for fourth, you got Tyronn Lue and Joe Mazzulla with 10% of the votes. Also receiving votes, JB Bickerstaff and Chris Finch. So shout out to JB for getting another mention in these NBA GM surveys of being a coach that has the best defensive schemes. Who has the best assistant coach in the NBA? I always find these weird because we really don't know like how good an assistant would actually be an NBA coach. But Michael Nori, 25% of the votes. He was actually a Pistons assistant under Dwayne Casey. Number 2, Jeff Van Gundy with the Clippers. Number 3, Royal Ivey from the Houston Rockets. And tied for fourth, Sam Cassell and Chris Quinn with the Miami Heat. There's a lot of mentions with these assistant coaches. Most of these guys you probably don't even know, so I'm not going to read also receiving votes in this one. Which active player would make the best head coach? 27% said Chris Paul. Tied for second, Mike Conley and TJ McConnell. Coming in at fourth, Fred VanVleet with 13% of the votes. Garrett Temple, number 5. I didn't even know he was still playing with the Toronto Raptors with 10% of the votes. And Drew Holiday coming in at number 7. Also got some votes. Kyle Anderson, Luke Cornett, Andrew Nebhart. Interesting. Miscellaneous, which team is the most fun to watch? Nuggets and the Thunder tied for first with 27% of the votes. Indiana Pacers, 20%. Golden State and Minnesota each got 7%. Pistons also got some votes in this one as one of the most fun teams to watch, along with the Houston Rockets, LA Lakers, and Orlando Magic. I think the Pistons will actually be in the top 3 as the most fun team to watch, just because it's chaos, you guys. You guys remember I was calling the Pistons last year the Cardiac Kids, but which team has the best home court advantage? Tied for first, Nuggets and Thunder again. They got 43% of the votes. Knicks got 7% of the votes. Celtics and the Cavs also received some votes from these general managers. Which team will have the league's most efficient offense? Cavs come in at number 1 at 40%. OKC Thunder 30%. Nuggets 20%. Also receiving votes, Pacers, Timberwolves, and Knicks. Which team's level of success this season is the toughest to predict? It's Philly, man. It has to be Philly. It's a health thing. We have like a 5-way tie or 6-way tie with the Mavericks, the Golden State Warriors, Houston Rockets, LA Clippers, LA Lakers, Memphis Grizzlies, and the Pelicans. Those are just teams that people have a big question mark with, and I get it. Which team has the most promising young core? OKC, which is wild to even have this conversation, 50% of the votes. San Antonio Spurs, 27% of the votes. Tied for third, the Detroit Pistons have 10% of the votes, along with the Houston Rockets. Magic got 3%. The fact that OKC is at number 1 still kind of boggles my mind because they just won a championship. But you look at the roster, they're still pretty young. Cool to see the Pistons get a nod there, tied for third with the Houston Rockets. Which player is the most athletic? Amen Thompson came in at number 1, 58% of the votes. Anthony Edwards came in at second, which is kind of crazy to think about because I feel like every time I watched Ant-Man this year, he was always posterizing someone on a dunk, but he got 23% of the votes coming in second place. Also receiving votes, you got Giannis, LeBron, John Morant, Shaedon Sharpe, Asar Thompson, Victor Wembanyama. So Asar gets a nod here. I think Asar is actually going to put a lot of people on this year. I think a lot of people are going to be tuning into the Detroit Pistons games just to watch Asar Thompson. Which player is the best pure shooter? Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, no surprise. 1 and 2. Which player is the fastest with the ball? Got De'Aaron Fox at 53%, John Morant at 33%. Tyrese Maxey gets 7%. Jaden Ivey gets some love. He also received a vote, and so did Amen Thompson. I honestly think Jaden Ivey is just as fast as De'Aaron Fox, if you ask me. You're just talking about a speed test. I think they're pretty damn close. Fox is probably maybe a smidge faster, but I would definitely place a wager just to see those two just have a race when Ivy is like 100% healthy. Which player is the best moving without the ball? Steph Curry. No surprise there. Also receiving votes, Desmond Bane from the Magic, Michael Porter Jr. From the Brooklyn Nets, and Duncan Robinson got a little vote there. So newly acquired Piston Duncan Robinson got a vote. Which player is the best passer? Nikola Jokic got 80% of the votes. Mr. Triple Double. No surprise there. Luka Doncic got 10% of the votes. Trae Young got 7% of the votes. And James Harden got 3% of the votes. Just kind of wrapping up with this GM survey, you guys. Which player is the best leader? Stephen Curry got 43% of the votes. Jalen Brunson got 13%, coming in at second. Nikola Jokic came in at third, 10% of the votes. Then you have a three-way tie for fourth with Giannis, SJ, and LeBron. Mike Conley from Minnesota, Anthony Edwards from Minnesota, Jason Tatum from Boston, and Fred VanVleet from Houston. Who is the most versatile player in the NBA? You have Giannis and Victor Wembanyama tied for first for 30% of the votes. Then you have a three-way tie with LeBron, Evan Mobley, and Jalen Williams coming in at 7%. And Kate Cunningham gets some love here, along with Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, Nikola Jokic, Kawhi Leonard, Jason Tatum. So cool to see Cade in the conversation with most versatile player in the NBA, which he is. I mean, he was playing off ball in the last preseason game. Like Asar was actually playing point guard, which we'll kind of talk about the preseason in a little bit, you guys. Which player has the best basketball IQ? Jokic comes in at number 1. No surprise there, 80% of the votes. LeBron James with the Lakers, 17% of the votes. And Chris Paul got 3% of the votes, coming in third place. Which player would you want taking a shot with the game on the line? Steph Curry. I think most people would have Steph Curry. He's done it so many times. He's in first place. Coming in second place, Kevin Durant. Number 3, Tyrese Halliburton. The fact that like he's not a little bit higher on this list is kind of crazy, especially the playoffs he had. I feel like he was just on a tear in the playoffs. He got 13% of the votes, coming in third. Luka Doncic came in at fourth with 10% of the votes. SGA got 7% of the votes. Jalen Brunson and Jokic also got some votes with which player you would want taking the last shot if the game was on the line. And I think this one was a kind of an interesting question. It says, what rule regarding play, schedule, draft lottery, playoff format, roster construction most needs to change? Number 1, they voted on roster construction. Apron rules too harsh. Add a cap discount for own drafted players, allowing trading partial salaries. Make minimum contracts the same. 26% of the general managers voted on it. I actually like this. Maybe it's something in the future they will add. It says add a cap discount for own drafted players. I actually kind of like that. Like if because we've talked about Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren and contract extensions. Like if you could get a cap discount for signing guys that you drafted to get contract extensions, I think that would actually kind of be cool. Number 2 that the GMs voted on was draft schedule. Back to 1 day, only 1 draft lottery day, and after free agency, 19%. Here's the thing, man. No one wants to stay up for 8 hours on a freaking NBA draft. I don't really like that. I think the 2 days is fine, though. Number 3, game flow. Continuous, faster reviews, hockey-style subs. Ooh, no live ball timeouts. Hockey-style subs would be kind of crazy. Could you imagine that? Like, you got Isaiah Stewart coming into the game for Jalen Duren and he accidentally body checks someone. Dude, that would be hilarious. I don't think the NBA will ever have hockey style subs. I don't think it would be like that crazy though. That's just where my mind goes because I'm just thinking of hockey players like hip checking people into the bench. That would actually be kind of like funny and entertaining. This is a basketball fan. Number 4 playoff format, 1 through 16 seeds, top seeds, choose opponents, change the play-in format. I don't want to see 1 through 16 seeds. Keep that in college. I think that's stupid. Tied for 5th, draft system. Can't draft in the top 6 3 years straight. Shouldn't reward losing. 7% of the GMs voted for that. Oh, damn. Well, I'm glad we're back on track because like if that was a thing that got like approved, and we were top 5. You know, we had the 5th overall pick, 5th overall pick, 5th overall pick. If that ever got implemented, man, that would be tough. That would be tough. Higher penalties for cap circumvention. No wonder why they're voting on that with the Kawhi stuff and the aspiration stuff going on right now. And then tied for 5th, also the schedule. Fewer back-to-backs, no home road back-to-backs. Yeah, home road back-to-backs are kind of wild to me. Also receiving votes. More G League experimentation, no disqualification on 6 foul, 1 shot plus ball. Last year, roster construction and apron rules. So that was basically the GM survey. We talked for about 27 minutes about it. Really interesting. The last one was probably my favorite. The hockey style subs. I'm still thinking about it. I think it would be so much fun. But we're going to get into the Bleacher Report articles and their mock trades that they do have for the Detroit Pistons. I mentioned at the top of the podcast would be going over a Bleacher Report article. Now, this one, honestly, I think is a crazy idea. I don't think it would ever happen. There have been a lot of crazy ideas on this podcast today, the hockey lineups, and now this. One trade every team would make if the deadline was before the season. Can you imagine if the NBA trading deadline wasn't in February, it was in October? Like, you can't make any trades during the season. You have to make it before the season. That would be chaotic. I'm here for it. Doubt Adam Silver does anything that diabolical. But, man, a trading deadline before the season would be crazy. All right, so there are 2 Pistons trades in this article. If you guys are interested in reading this, it is over at BleacherReport.com. We're going to go to the Charlotte Hornets because that's the first mention of a Detroit Pistons player in this one. So the trade that they cooked up, and they didn't really cook up in my opinion if you're a Piston fan watching this, is Miles Bridges for Tobias Harris and a lottery-protected 2031 first-round pick. And their explanation for why Charlotte might do something like this is the Hornets are another team that isn't likely to push for the postseason berth anytime soon, so they could pursue the same goal as Brooklyn, turn a vet into a future pick. In this case, Charlotte also gets the added benefit of picking up an expiring contract that won't encumber the team's books beyond the season. The the Pistons, meanwhile, get a little more explosive option at the 4 who can play some 2-man game with Cade Cunningham. Now, Miles Bridges, I know you guys. Michigan State product. He's been on the Detroit Pistons radar, not just with you guys, not just with the Detroit Pistons fan base. There are some people in the organization that really liked Miles Bridges. They've liked him since the draft process. I've talked to people in the Pistons front office and all the reports that we heard saying like, hey, Pistons are interested in Miles Bridges. All those reports were true. There are some people that really like Miles Bridges. Now, I'm not really sure if I would do a trade like this. Yeah, obviously, Tobias is on an expiring. I think the season would have to go absolutely south for the Pistons to even trade Tobias. Not just because of, like, you're talking about from a contract standpoint. The season would have to go south, but they're not even in the playoffs for the Pistons to do this because the organization views Tobias in such a positive light for his off the court, his mentorship, and what he does in the community. I think those are a lot of things that the Pistons organization loves about Tobias Harris. But Miles Bridges is younger. He's more explosive. His shooting is kind of dropped off a little bit in a sense. The pick is intriguing to me, but it is protected in 2031, and it's, 5 years out, 6 years out. So there's no guarantee that pick conveys, but this was the first trade that Bleacher Report did come up with. The final trade that Bleacher Report came up with was a Pistons Utah Jazz trade. Now, we've done Lauri Markkanen reaction mock trades on this YouTube channel before and on this podcast. So I'm intrigued to see what they came up with another trade. So let's look at it. So we got Tobias Harris, Jaden Ivey, Bobby Klitman, a 2030 first, and a top 5 protected 2032 first for Lauri Markkanen. Now, I think this is almost identical to the last one we reacted to. I think if you're trading for Lauri Markkanen, there's probably more draft picks involved. You obviously are adding Tobias Harris for the salary. Jaden Ivey, I don't really see a fit or a need for them to trade for another combo guard when they have several on their roster. Bobby's a young, intriguing player. They might want that, but here's my thing with it. I think I would be out just because that's quite a bit to actually give up. But, their explanation says that in the event the Utah Jazz make Lauri Markkanen available, which maybe should have happened a while ago, there should be plenty of suitors around the league for one of its best, most unique finishers. The Finns' ability to dominate on either catch-and-shoot three-pointer threat or above-the-rim cutting, and his willingness to do it without dominating the ball or over-dribbling would be put to good use by Cade Cunningham. These two, along with Jalen Duren and Nassar Thompson, would give the Detroit Pistons a team that could win in the East as early as the season. On the Jazz side, fans may be hoping for more draft capital for Markkanen, but prying Jaden Ivey from the Pistons would be no small feat. There's always a mild concern when a player is coming back from a season-ending injury, but Ivey's just 23 and averaged 17 points in the 24-25 season and has shown more of a star-level upside than Keontae George or Isaiah Collier. Okay, I get Bleacher Report's stance from both sides. I think from the Pistons standpoint, yes, Lauri Markkanen fits next to Cade Cunningham. A lot of players fit next to Cade Cunningham. What they're not really taking into consideration or even discussing for that matter is Lauri Markkanen is on an insanely huge contract that he just signed. It's on average around $50 million. Okay? If the Detroit Pistons are going to trade for a guy that's making $40-50 million, for me personally, it's going to have to be for a more like an all-star type player, right? Not saying that Lauri Markkanen couldn't be an all-star next to Cade Cunningham. I think the pick and pops would be deadly, stretch 4, but the guy doesn't play defense. For $50 million, I think I'm out. I know he had a resurgence under J.B. Bickerstaff, but again, like Jaden Ivey, Tobias, a first and then a protected first, and Bobby Klitman, I think I would be out. I don't even know what the Jazz really want to do with Lauri Markkanen. Obviously, he had a really good EuroLeague. Looked like he was just, getting back to his old self. But I kind of disagree in the standpoint of the Utah Jazz having several suitors from teams across the league wanting to trade for Lauri Markkanen. One, because of the contract. And two, who the general manager is. Danny Ainge, his asking price is ridiculous for all of his players. Like, how many times have we come up here? We're not talking about Pistons. We'll talk about the NBA sometimes on this podcast. And we're talking about Walker Kessler. And this guy wants 2-3 first-round picks for Walker Kessler. No disrespect to him, but he's not worth 2-3 first-round picks. Maybe one. I can't imagine what his asking price would be for Lauri Markkanen. I know the writer at Bleacher Report tried to cook up a trade that he thinks that Danny Ainge might want to look at. I don't even think he would want a Tobias Harris when I think they have a lot of power forwards on their roster. Obviously, you have to do it because of the money, but like they probably don't want Jaden Ivey. They just drafted another combo guard in Walter Clayton Jr. I think they're kind of selling Keontae George a little short, give him a little bit more time. Jaden Ivey would be a really good get for Utah if they could, but if I'm the Detroit Pistons, absolutely not. I think it would be a little bit more difficult to re-sign Asar and Jalen Duren to contract extensions in the event of a trade like this, even like going down. But I would probably be out on the Lauri sweepstakes. I told you guys before, like if I'm trading that many assets for a guy that's making $40-50 million, I'd rather go all in for like I don't even know. There's not like a lot of guys in the market that I would just look into the young prospects that I have and just like kind of push my chips on the table to say. Obviously, I know we can't keep all of these guys. I know someone will be a casualty. You might trade one or two, but I don't know, man. I really don't. I think the Pistons will make moves. I really do. But I don't know if it's going to be for a player like a Lauri Markkanen. Oops, there we go. My screen went black for a minute, but I did kind of want to transition over to the final segment of this podcast, you guys. And it's preseason, right? So we've had 2 preseason basketball games so far. 1 win, 1 loss. Most recently was a loss against the Bucks. But I did want to kind of touch on, Cade Cunningham. And I think a lot of the conversations that we had is, just, what ifs, just kind of having like fun conversations throughout the offseason. But with Cade, what I was really impressed with in these 2 preseason games is averaging 19 minutes a game, and he's putting up over 20 points a game. Put 20 points up in the first preseason game in 19 minutes. Put 26 points up in 19 minutes against the Milwaukee Bucks. Cade looks like he's ready for the season to start. If the season started tomorrow, Cade would be ready. He's in great shape right now. I think going through that New York Knicks series really just lit a fire under his ass, and that's great for us Pistons fans because he was so good last season, especially once Jaden Ivey went down. I think he found a whole nother gear that, not saying that he couldn't get there, but I think it was actually a blessing in disguise from the standpoint of this. Cade knows if we want to win, I got to score 30. He's got that in his mindset now. And he had 26 points in 19 minutes in a preseason game, mind you. I know preseason is, you don't want to take too much stock into it, but he looks really good out there. I think there's some other players in the preseason that I've been really impressed with. Paul Reed, he's been rebounding the basketball at such a great rate. Obviously, he's a third-string center. I don't know how much we're going to get to see Paul Reed, considering Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart are your starting center and your backup center. But I think Paul Reed does deserve a little bit of a shout-out and some shine. I've been really impressed with Adonis Jenkins. Obviously, he did struggle against the Milwaukee Bucks starters. But overall, the first preseason game, he looked good. Tolo Smith has had his moments so far. Chaz Lanier, really like what I'm seeing out of him. Bobby Klippman had a good game against the Bucks. Hoping to see more consistent play out of him in these final 2 preseason games. And we do have 2 preseason games next week. One on Tuesday against the Cleveland Cavaliers in Cleveland, and George Blaha will be calling that game, and it will be on FanDuel. There won't be any simulcast, and we'll finish the preseason with the only home preseason game against the Washington Wizards on Thursday, and that'll kind of wrap up the preseason until the NBA season does start. We're 10 days until opening night, and I'm so excited. But I did want to touch on the preseason for a couple of minutes. We've only had 2 games. We have 2 more going into this week, but really excited to see Some of the guys that may not make the roster, they may make the G League team, how they do fare, how Chaz does, how Bobby does, what kind of lineups is JB going to roll out for the final two games. He went like really crazy last game because Jaden Ivey, Karis LeVert, and Jalen Duren decided just to not play. Duren was obviously a hamstring injury, and the other two was rest, but Duren was playing in the open practice last week, so that is a good sign if you are a Detroit Pistons fan. But do want to wrap up this podcast, you guys. Obviously, this isn't a live stream. This is a pre-recorded. Tried to get a guest on this week, but it was just so chaotic. I know just in my life, I'm sure you guys don't care. I've just been having like service guys come to my house because I bought a furnace and someone didn't know how to install it. And was blowing cold air. Finally got a service guy to actually fix it. So the guys that installed it actually did it backwards, which is just my luck, right? I do have some news to share with you guys, though. Pretty soon. Monday, it'll be official. But big things are going to be happening on the podcast. And I can't say anymore. I'm really excited for it. Nothing is changing on the podcast, by the way. It's just I'm getting more help behind the scenes, and I'll be able to do more podcasts, produce more content. So I'm really excited about that. But I do appreciate you guys watching me for over the past hour or so. I hope you guys are having a great weekend. And I will see you guys Tuesday and Thursday for the Detroit Pistons post-game shows that we're doing all season long, by the way. This is not just a preseason thing. We'll be doing it for every Detroit Pistons home and away game. Doesn't matter if it's a freaking West Coast trip at 3 a.m. You'll see my face reacting after the game. But hope you guys are having a great night, and I'll talk to you soon. As always, go Pistons. Peace.